Alright guys, welcome back to another Battle for Azeroth video. Today we're going to be talking about my main class, alright? And that's going to be the Arcane Mage, okay? So Arcane Mage has been my main class. It's been what I got rank 1 in. I've got several of like orange parses and rating. Like I've done high mythic plus as Arcane. It's like my main known class. Everybody knows me as this class, alright? This class has had a couple different changes, like nothing really crazy, but it is significant enough that I think it deserves its own video just to talk to all the people that are interested in the Arcane Mage for next expansion. Okay, we're just going to dive into it. I'm going to show you a couple of the abilities. There's really not a whole lot of changes in abilities, but I'm going to go ahead and just walk you through that. Then I'll walk you through talents. Then I'll walk you through overall class philosophy and just my overall opinion for it. Okay, so very first up, we still have that 4 arcane charge mechanic. There's really nothing different with that. The thing is with specifically like abilities, the only thing that's different is the fact that we don't have Mark of a Lunith anymore for that artifact ability, which is really disheartening. But we do still have like displacement, and I mean you can see like you could still displace, you could still do the 4 to 5 shimmers per 30 seconds type thing. And then the way that mana works is actually quite different. And I'll explain that in just a second, but I do want to let you guys know, if you don't yet know, mages have Arcane Intellect. This is for all specs. Basically, this is the same how it always has been. It increases your intellect by 10% for 1 hour, and it is a raid-wide buff. Pretty much, like a lot of the different classes have these buffs back in Battle for Azeroth. It's something that was removed in Legion, now it's back. And as you can see, mages do get to benefit from that. We have that Arcane Intellect 1 hour buff for us and everyone else. And 10% of intellect is a lot of damage, so definitely keep that up if possible. I want to talk about the mana real quick. So mana is a lot different for Arcane Mages in Battle for Azeroth. So normally what you would do is you would stack up to 4 arcane charges, and then you would actually clear that, and then with your Arcane Barrage, and you would continue. And if you did that well, you would be able to manage your mana very well. But I've noticed a lot of the different mages, or sorry, a lot of the different mage spells in Arcane Mage all cost a lot of mana. So I don't know if being out of mana is going to really directly affect the playstyle a lot more, because managing that mana seems very difficult now because of just how much mana each one of the spells actually costs. Like Arcane Explosion is like 5,000 mana. Like you can do, you know, 8 arcane explosions before you run out of mana pretty much, and that's just really pretty crazy. And I also noticed that when you don't have 4 arcane charges, your arcane explosions still cost 5,000 mana. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I don't know if that's just a bug, but it is something that's notable. And then we also have clear casting that is back in Battle for Azeroth. It is a baseline Arcane Mage ability, and how it works, it kind of like completely changed the way Arcane Missiles works. So for each 1% of your maximum mana you spend, you have a 2.5% chance to gain clear casting, making your next Arcane Missiles or Arcane Explosion cost no mana. This is your new proc for Arcane Missiles. Okay, and it's important for me to explain Arcane Missiles because it's completely different now. Still does the same effects, still does the same, you know, amount of damage. It does cost a lot of mana though. It's 8,000 mana, and you can cast it whenever you want. You never have to have a proc to cast Arcane Missiles like it was in Legion. You can actually just walk up and you can just hit Arcane Missiles on a target. Similar to how Arcane Blast works, no difference there at all, okay? So Arcane Missiles, it does cost a lot of mana, but if you know, the idea is that you would basically spend as much mana as you can with Arcane Blast, get clear casting. When you have clear casting, you use Arcane Missiles. And this has a weird interaction with one of the new talents, and this brings me into the talent section of this video, okay? So there's really not a whole lot changing with talents. There's a couple changes. There's 3 talents that have overall been changed, and I'll explain that. These 2 first tier talents have actually been changed entirely. How this works now is there's a rule of 3s, which is a brand new ability or a brand new talent in Battle for Azeroth. How it works is that when you gain your 3rd arcane charge, that 3rd arcane charge ability that puts you at your 4th arcane charge costs no mana. This includes Arcane Missiles, this includes Arcane Blast only, so not Arcane Explosion. And this means that basically your mana intensiveness will be much less, because, you know, pretty much every time you're rotating through those arcane charges, you get one of those more expensive spells for free. I definitely think that's an interesting one. It makes surviving with, or it makes your mana like longer, has more longevity with how much mana you have, but you do lose damage because of that second ability, which is what I choose most of the time, called Mana Adept. And how Mana Adept works is it means that when you are above 80% mana, your Arcane Missiles fires 2 additional missiles. So this means that that artifact trait that would allow you to sometimes have more Arcane Missiles whenever you use the ability, that trait was baked into a talent, and a brand new talent at that, which means that when you have that 80% mana or above, you get more damage out of your Arcane Missiles, and this does work with clear casting. So say you have 90% mana, you have a clear casting proc, you cast Arcane Missiles, you're going to get 2 additional missiles for free. So a lot of Arcane Mage is going to be really deciding whether or not Mana Adept works and makes sense for your current position, and like if you're going to get that additional damage, and trying to get clear casting procs while above 80% mana for this extra damage, okay? Because Arcane Missiles does do more damage if it's free, but if it's not free, it's better to Arcane Blast. I'm sure once you get into the class, you'll start to understand the more complex rotation, but overall, it is definitely interesting. And having that that mechanic with Arcane Missiles being always available, but costing a lot of mana, and in also combination with clear casting and Mana Adept, there's a lot of decisions and a lot of like, if this happens, then this happens, a lot of methodical thinking whenever playing this class, and it's very interesting. Last but not least, we have a not yet implemented talent that is subject to change. Temporal Flux was completely changed, actually baked into Arcane Blast, but I'll talk about that in a second. Temporal Flux means that when you evocate and your evocate ends, you gained its effect again in 5 seconds after your evocate ends. So how this works is you would evocate to full mana. I would imagine that you would spam, Arcane Blast and start spending all your mana again, and then 5 seconds after that evocate ends, you gain that evocation effect again. Pretty much meaning that you can somehow like burn through all of your mana in that certain amount of time while you're evocating passively after your Temporal Flux ends. I don't know how this would really match. It's not yet implemented, so I can't even test it quite yet. But I don't know how this would match compared to Overpowered and PvE, because Overpowered is just so useful, and Arcane Orb is just so useful in PvP. I just don't know when I'm really going to use this, especially since we get the damage buff out of Arcane Blast that we would get before. Real quick, let me show you guys. So you actually, as you build Arcane Blast charges, your Arcane Blast now baseline gets faster. You actually go up to 32% in reduced cast time per Arcane charge. So what this means is that, it's a 2-second cast for your first charge of Arcane Blast, and then like with no Arcane charges, but as you ramp up in those Arcane charges and Arcane Blasts become more expensive, you actually reduce that cast time. So they've really baked in that old Temporal Flux style of design into the Arcane Blast spell, and I think that's a really cool change. It's something that I've missed. I think this was actually in previous expansions, but I didn't really play a whole lot of Arcane back then. But now that it's really nice, because whenever you put down your Rune of Power, whenever you have Overpowered, you can actually use Overpowered and your Rune of Power and cast Arcane Blast really, really quickly. And it does feel very nice, and it's something that's definitely nice to have. I just don't know when you would really use the second Temporal Flux, like the new one. I just don't know when you would use that, because you get that effect out of the baseline spells. So it is what it is, especially since Overpowered is so good in combination with the Arcane Blast baseline changes. But regardless, guys, talking about the overall philosophy, in my opinion, on this class, it still feels good. I really don't have a whole lot of complaints with Arcane Mage. It still feels like Arcane Mage. The only thing that does kind of suck in PvE is that you don't get the legendary shoulder procs anymore. This was so vital to Mythic Plus and AoE fights as Arcane, and not having that reset with Arcane Orbs and being able to flow through Arcane charges really fast if the shoulders do proc, that was a really cool effect, and I hope that somehow comes back in Azeroth gear. It's definitely an interesting one to me, and I really liked how sometimes you would get Arcane Orbs to basically reset your Arcane charges, and it would make you do a ton of damage, and it felt really fast paced, and I thought that was a really fun moment whenever I would have those Arcane Orbs proc. That's the only thing I really miss about this class, and outside of that, you still have the mobility that you could always have in PvP with Arcane Mage. You could still have all of those displacements, and you still have your Arcane Power on a pretty low cooldown. You still have Presence of Mind doing the same thing. There's really not a whole lot of changes to this class. Just a couple things that are interesting and beneficial, but also you lose a lot of AoE damage moving into Battle for Azeroth, in my opinion, because Arcane Explosion is so expensive, and you don't have that legendary shoulder proc as you did before. So regardless, guys, I hope that this did help you guys. I'm going to show you a little bit of leveling footage from Arcane Mage, and I will see you at the end of the video, so I hope you guys enjoy. All right, guys, that does sum it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, a little bit of a class preview, be sure to hit a big thumbs up on this video, support the channel. You can also subscribe to my channel to keep all up to date with the Battle for Azeroth content coming. I really appreciate you guys watching. Leave a comment down below with what you guys have to say about the Arcane Mage spec, and if you like the changes that I had to show you. But regardless, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one.